No call, no ride, a silent gate. A mother's hope, a cruel twist of fate. Just 5 short words, a message sent. A son's goodbye, a heart unmeant. I knew something was wrong when no one met me at the airport gate. After 5 hours on the plane, 2 hours in security, and 1 hour waiting at the luggage area with no call or message, I finally used a rideshare app to get a car myself. The air in San Diego was heavy and humid, the kind that sticks to your skin. I held my purse close and sat on a bench outside, watching the palm trees shake in the wind. I wondered if they had simply forgotten what time it was. They hadn't. They hadn't planned to come at all. The driver, a young woman, helped me with my suitcase and asked, "Visiting family?" I smiled politely. "Yes, my son's wedding." She looked at me in the mirror. "Big day. You must be so proud." I gave a small nod. I wasn't sure what I felt. Oliver hadn't seen me in over 3 years. He called twice a year on my birthday and at Christmas. Both times he sounded like he was in a hurry. But when he announced he was marrying Caitlin, he did it in a group email. No phone call, no personal message, just a digital card with a picture of palm trees. I told myself he was busy. I told myself maybe I had not kept up with him. Maybe he thought I wouldn't care. But I did, more than he would ever know. When the car stopped at the address he had sent me, I was surprised by the building. It wasn't his house. It was a simple hotel, the kind with free breakfast and old carpets that smell like bleach. At the front desk, a young man checked me in without surprise. "Your son booked this for you, just for one night. Checkout is at noon tomorrow." I signed the papers slowly. Just one night. Upstairs, the room was clean but had no personality. A towel folded into a swan was on the bed. I unpacked in silence. No note from Oliver. No welcome gift. I opened my suitcase, took out my navy blue dress, and hung it on the door. It was a simple dress with sleeves, the kind I could wear to both a wedding and a funeral. I had worn it once before to my sister's funeral, but the dress didn't care what the event was. It just waited. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the TV, which was turned off. A commercial for cruises was playing on repeat. Outside, the sun was setting. I checked my phone. No message. Around 7 o'clock, I finally sent him a message myself. Arrived safely at the hotel. "Let me know if you need help tomorrow." No response. At 9:30, the silence in the room became very loud. I made myself some tea with the tiny machine in the corner, drinking it slowly while looking at old photos on my phone. Oliver at age 10, holding a baseball. Oliver in his college graduation gown. Oliver with Caitlin in a photo I had never seen before. Her arms were around him at a vineyard. She looked beautiful and natural, the kind of woman who makes you feel like you're not dressed well enough no matter what you are wearing. The next morning, I woke up before the sun came out. The hotel curtains let in small bits of light. I took a shower, got dressed, and put up my gray hair. I wore my pearl earrings, a gift from my late husband, Julian, and a soft pink scarf that had belonged to his mother. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like a stranger. I looked like someone trying not to hope. At 8:30, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't know. "Hi, this is Amanda from Coastal Bloom Events. Just checking in. You're Mrs. Holloway, correct? The mother of the groom?" "Yes," I replied. "Great. We have you scheduled for table 17. The ceremony starts at 3. The address for the place should be in your email." "I haven't received anything," I said. A pause. I heard papers rustling. "Oh, it looks like we sent the details to Caitlin's parents' list. I'll send it to you now. Sorry about that." "That's fine," I said. "Table 17. Later, when I arrived at the venue, a shiny white building near the ocean cliffs, the parking lot was already full. I walked slowly, being careful in my low heels. At the entrance, a young woman with a clipboard smiled at me, but she didn't know my name. I said it twice before she nodded and pointed me toward the garden where the ceremony would be. There were chairs in rows with ribbons tied to them, fluttering in the sea wind. People stood in groups, laughing and hugging. I looked for my son. I didn't see him. Then I heard her voice. "Everyone, this is Miriam." She used to be married to Oliver's father. I turned. Caitlin stood beside a group of guests. Her perfect hand rested on a friend's arm. She said it lightly, almost kindly, like she was introducing a family object from the past. I stared at her. I wasn't Oliver's mother. I wasn't the groom's mom. No, I was the late Julian Holloway's ex-wife. That's who I was now. And Oliver, standing right behind her, said nothing. I didn't react right away. Years of silence teach you to pause, to check your own feelings before you respond. I just gave a small, polite smile, as if Caitlin had introduced me properly, as if I hadn't just been turned into a stranger at my own son's wedding. The group around her said polite hellos. One man shook my hand. "Nice to meet you." He didn't know. How could he? Oliver was fixing his shirt buttons, still quiet, still pretending he hadn't heard. "I'll be in the third row," I said calmly. Caitlin smiled, already turning back to her friends. Her dress was shiny in the morning light. It was smooth, classy, and expensive. I walked away slowly, my legs stiff from the weight of it all. The chairs were filling up. White flower petals were on the ground along the aisle. A woman with a headset told me to go to a row near the back. "This is for extended family," she whispered. I looked at the card on the seat. My name wasn't there. It just said guest table 17. I sat. The ceremony was beautiful. Too beautiful, if I'm being honest. The kind of perfection that leaves no room for real memories. The promises were practiced, not truly felt. The words Caitlin read sounded like they came from a magazine. Oliver smiled a big, friendly, and sincere smile. He looked happy. Or maybe he looked relieved. He never once looked my way during the ceremony. They kissed. Everyone clapped, cameras flashed. And I sat in the last row, my hands folded over my purse, waiting for my chance to disappear. At the party, a bus took guests to the hall. I asked if I could ride with the family. The driver looked confused. "Only immediate family. In this one, ma'am." Of course. I waited for the next bus. When I arrived at the party, a hall with a high ceiling, crystal lights, and a group playing music in the corner, my name wasn't on the main list of seats. I found a person who was helping. She checked her list again. "Oh, yes. Table 17, right by the kitchen." She smiled as if that was a good thing. I walked through the hall. The tables were shiny with gold forks and knives and fancy menus. The flowers in the middle of the tables were tall white orchids. At table 17, 7 people were already seated. I didn't know any of them. A distant cousin of Caitlin's, an old coworker of Oliver's, and a couple who had come from far away and didn't know anyone else. I smiled and sat, quiet, polite, like a ghost in pearls. From across the room, I could see Oliver laughing with Caitlin and her parents. He looked relaxed. I saw them toast each other. Then her father stood and gave a speech about 2 wonderful families coming together. Julian's name was mentioned. My name was not. No one had asked me to take a photo with the couple. No flower for my jacket. No mention in the program. Even my title, Mother of the Groom, had been quietly removed. I drank my wine. I nodded at the stranger next to me. I listened to a man talk about sailing. I pretended not to notice that Oliver's high school English teacher was sitting closer to the dance floor than I was. Later, as dinner was served, I quietly went to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. I didn't cry. I put my hands on the counter and let the weight of everything rest on my shoulders. When I came back, dessert had already been served. Someone had taken my seat, thinking I had left. I didn't ask for it back. I stood near the wall instead, like a helper with nothing to do. The music started. People began to dance. First the couple, then the families, then the special people whose names were said over the microphone. Father of the bride, stepmother of the groom. I froze. Stepmother. Oliver's father had died 10 years ago. His second wife, Eleanor, had married him late in his life. They were together for less than 5 years before he had a stroke. She was never close to Oliver. She barely came to his birthdays. She was now slow dancing with him in the middle of the floor. I stepped back and found the exit. The air outside was warm and full of summer, and still no one noticed I was gone. Then I heard a voice behind me. Mimi. I turned. June, my granddaughter from Oliver's first marriage. She was 19 now, tall, with sharp eyes, and her shoulders were a little hunched, like mine used to be. Her brown, curly hair was frizzy in the humidity. I saw you leave, she said. Are you okay? I nodded. It's too loud inside. She looked at me closely. They didn't put you at the family table. No. She bit her lip. Dad said, I know what your dad said. Silence. He's not always kind. I looked at her then. Really looked. Her heels were too high for her feet. Her eye makeup was running from the humidity or maybe from being upset. And yet she stood straight, as if she had decided not to be small. I took her hand. Come, I said, let's walk. We walked along a path behind the building, where strings of lights hung like small stars. The farther we went, the quieter the music became. We could hear the soft sound of the leaves and the distant noise of the ocean. June didn't speak for a while. She just held my hand as we walked, like she used to when she was a little girl and needed to feel someone strong next to her. Grandma, she said finally, why didn't you say something? To who? I asked gently. To Dad, to Caitlin, to everyone, that you're his mother, that you helped pay for this wedding. I paused. A part of me still hoped I was wrong, that it was a mistake, not a plan, that Oliver, my own son, hadn't decided I was not important. But now, standing in the garden under the flickering lights, it was impossible to keep lying to myself. I didn't want to make a scene, I said. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe someone would fix it. They won't, she said simply. They didn't forget. Caitlin's mom told me a few days ago that you were kindly letting Eleanor come in your place. I stopped walking. In my place. June nodded. They told people you weren't well enough to fly, that you insisted Eleanor come as the mother figure instead. I laughed a strange, empty laugh. I had never said anything like that. I had said yes to the invitation months ago. I had booked my own flight. I had bought my own dress. I had taken time off from my job at the library just to be here. And still, I wasn't a part of this wedding. I was erased. June looked up at me. Do you want to leave? I did. Every part of me wanted to be anywhere else. But I wasn't ready to disappear. Not like this. Not quietly. No, I said, I want to finish the evening. I want them to see me, to remember I was here. June squeezed my hand. Then I'll sit with you. We walked back toward the building. Just as we reached the edge of the patio, Caitlin's voice came over the speakers. And to everyone who's made today so magical, she was saying, holding a glass of champagne, especially to the amazing people who made Oliver the man I fell in love with, his father, Julian, and my parents, and of course my wonderful mother-in-law, Eleanor. Applause. My name was never said. June's hand shook in mine. Inside, we returned to table 17. No one had noticed I was gone. I pulled out my chair, and sat quietly while June sat beside me. No one said a word. No one asked where I had been. As the next food course arrived, some fancy, tasteless food, June leaned in. "Do you want me to say something?" "You should. They need to be embarrassed." I smiled a sad smile. "They're not embarrassed, sweetheart. That's the problem." Across the room, Oliver and Caitlin were on the dance floor. Their arms were around each other, their faces lit by the lights. They looked like the kind of couple you see in a wedding magazine. Carefully chosen, beautiful, perfect. And I, the woman who gave him life, was seated next to a man explaining something about money to a tired cousin from a different state. June reached into her purse and took out something wrapped in a napkin. "I brought you a piece of cake. The good one, the fancy almond one with the real cream." I looked at her, surprised. I knew they wouldn't bring any of that cake to this table. A silence stretched between us, the kind that only deep love can hold. I took the cake. "Thank you, June. You're the only one who still sends me birthday cards, or asks about my exams, or remembers how I like my tea." "I see you, Grandma." I held her gaze, then looked away before I started to cry. There are moments in life when something breaks, not with a loud crash or a dramatic fall. Quietly, cleanly, like a thread pulled free from a piece of cloth. And you know it will never be the same again. I sat for the rest of the evening without hoping for anything. No more hope that someone would stand and say, "Wait, we forgot Miriam." No fantasy of Oliver pulling me to the dance floor. Just the simple, steady presence of a girl who still knew what love looked like. When it was time for the couple to leave in their car, June and I stayed seated. We didn't wave. We didn't clap. We just watched. And when the room began to get empty and people were gathering their coats and gifts and glasses of wine, I stood, walked outside, and called for a ride. June insisted on walking me to the car. "Will you be okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I've been through worse. I'll call you tomorrow." I touched her cheek. "That would be lovely." As the car drove away, I didn't look back at the wedding hall. I looked forward, toward the hotel, toward my suitcase, toward the life I had left waiting in Portland. A life where I was not a mistake or a forgotten person or someone's ex. The hotel room was quiet when I returned. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort you. It just confirms you're alone. I took off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed. My dress was still buttoned up to my neck, and my hands were resting in my lap. I hadn't spoken to Oliver once that day, not a single word. Not when I arrived, not during the ceremony, not at the reception. We hadn't even looked each other in the eye. It was as if he had planned the whole day to leave me out completely. He was never rude, never loud, just not there for me. I looked down at my hands. I had worn the same ring since 1974, a simple silver band Julian had given me when we couldn't afford anything else. I never replaced it, not even after he died. Even when Oliver started calling me old-fashioned and laughing, I kept it. I took it off slowly and put it on the nightstand. The dress came off next. I hung it back on the door, like I had the night before. This time, I knew I wouldn't be wearing it again. Not for Oliver, not for anyone who couldn't say my name without being full of their own pride. I sat at the small desk, opened my tablet, and went to the wedding website the planner had sent months ago. My name was hidden in the billing section, connected to several bills from the sellers. The food was paid for completely by me. The flowers, also by me. The deposit for the photographer, me. It had been my gift, a quiet one. I had asked to remain anonymous, thinking it would keep my dignity, thinking it would keep Oliver from saying no. He had never thanked me, but I told myself it was because he didn't know. Now, I wasn't sure what he knew or what he pretended not to know. At the bottom of the list of bills, I saw a final payment scheduled for tomorrow. the last of the money for the wedding hall itself. It would be automatically taken from my account. A final act paid for by the woman who was seated next to the kitchen. My fingers were on the button to contact the person who planned the wedding. Then I paused. Not yet. Not out of anger. Not out of hurt pride. I needed to think. And when I acted, it would be clear, permanent, and my own choice. I closed the tablet. Instead, I reached into my suitcase and took out a letter I hadn't planned to give him. Not today. Maybe not ever. I had written it on the plane here. I had folded it 3 times and put it in an envelope for Oliver. It wasn't full of anger. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest. A letter from a mother to her son, full of quiet questions and the soft sadness of decades that had passed too quickly. I hadn't known if I would give it to him. Now, I knew I wouldn't. I tore it in half, then in half again. Then I cried. Not the loud, shaking crying of a woman who has been betrayed, but the slow, quiet tears of someone who has spent a lifetime waiting for the child she raised to come home. Not to her house, but to her heart. When I stopped crying, I made tea in the little hotel pot and drank it slowly, staring out the window at the blinking lights of San Diego. It had always seemed so far from Portland. Now it just looked small. I went to bed without setting an alarm. In the middle of the night, I woke up once confused, instinctively reaching for Julian. And then I remembered he had been gone for 10 years. And now Oliver was gone, too, just in a different way. In the morning, my phone lit up with a message. June. Morning, Grandma. Just checking on you. I hope you slept okay. I meant it last night. I see you. Call me when you're ready. I held the phone to my chest. That message, just those 28 words, felt more like home than anything Oliver had said in the last 10 years. I sat at the desk again, opened my banking app. The amount of money was staring back at me. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. Enough to choose. Enough to change my path. Then I called my lawyer. His assistant answered, sounding cheerful and organized. Good morning. This is Nadia at Blakely and Moore. Hi, Nadia. This is Miriam Holloway. I'd like to make changes to my legal documents, and I'd like to do it today. There was a pause. Absolutely, Mrs. Holloway. I'll check to see if Mr. Moore is free. I smiled into the phone, a soft, private smile, one that only I could see. Thank you, dear. No rush. I've already waited long enough. The office of Blakely and Moore was in a simple building downtown. It was far from the shiny wedding places and fancy bars where Caitlin's family and friends liked to go. I had been there once before, after Julian died, to deal with his will, the bank accounts, the kind of things you don't expect to have to do alone until suddenly you are. Mr. Moore was waiting when I arrived. He was a tall man with a receding hairline and the calm hands of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He greeted me warmly, not with pity, that already felt like a small act of kindness. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances, he said, telling me to sit down. I'm not, I replied. That seemed to surprise him, but he nodded and opened his notebook. What would you like to change? Everything. I took a thin folder from my bag and slid it across the table. My current will leaves the majority of my property to my son, Oliver Holloway. That is no longer right. Mr. Moore looked at me for a moment, then opened the folder. I want the house in Portland to be put into a trust in my name, with my granddaughter, June, as the one who will receive it. I want the wedding payments canceled if possible, and I'd like to remove Oliver as the person who will be in charge of my property when I am gone. He didn't write right away. May I ask what made you change your mind? I looked out the window. The sky was bright with the light of early summer. Somewhere out there, Oliver and Caitlin were probably opening gifts, enjoying the light of their carefully planned life. A life without me in it. I was introduced Yesterday, I said slowly, as his late father's ex-wife, not as his mother, not as the person who paid for half their wedding, not even as someone worth mentioning. Mr. Moore nodded seriously. I understand. And yet, I don't want to be mean. This isn't about revenge. Then what is it about? Dignity, I said simply, and clarity. I've spent years pretending things were fine, covering up insults with hope. I don't want to do that anymore. He began to take notes. I watched the pen glide over the paper. It felt like a release. Do you want to write a new, will completely, or change the current one? New, I said, a clean start. And the trust for June. I want her to have control when she turns 25. Until then, I'll manage it. She's the only person in this family who still sees me. Really sees me. He looked up. That's rare. She's rare. We spent the next hour going through all the details. Bank account numbers, property information, medical instructions. It was planned and quiet. When we were finished, he leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Holloway, you're doing something most people take decades to even think about. I'm 74, I said with a small smile. I don't have decades to waste. He laughed softly. As I stood up to leave, he asked gently, Do you want him to know? I paused at the door. Eventually, I said, but not yet. First, I want to know who I am without him. Back at the hotel, I changed into my travel clothes, loose linen pants, and a soft blue sweater that Julian used to say made me look like a cloud on a mission. I packed the dress carefully, folding it not out of feelings but out of respect. The earrings came off. The pearls went back in their velvet box. At noon, I checked out. The front desk clerk asked if I had enjoyed my stay. I smiled politely. It was very eye-opening. Outside, the sun warmed my shoulders as I waited for the taxi. My suitcase was small, worn, and still had a faint smell of lavender. A little old, but still reliable, just like me. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not June. I'd call her from the airport. Not Oliver. He hadn't called at all. As the taxi drove away, I watched the streets go by in reverse. Fancy coffee shops, wedding photographers' studios, palm trees lining the sidewalks like exclamation points in a sentence I no longer wanted to finish. At the airport, I moved slowly. No need to hurry now. I passed couples holding hands, families arguing over luggage, children asleep on shoulders. I had none of that. And yet, for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. At the gate, I sat by the window and opened a small notebook. I began writing. Not a letter, not a list, just thoughts. Loose, imperfect, true things I will no longer say sorry for. My age, my quietness, wanting to be seen, saying no, changing my mind. I drew a line under the last one twice, changing my mind. The flight home was calm. I sat by the window, drinking ginger ale, and letting the humming of the plane fill the empty spaces where sadness used to press too hard. The woman next to me, in her early 40s, with a clean blouse and a laptop that was always open, asked once if I needed anything. I said no. She didn't speak again. Perfect. When we landed in Portland, the air felt heavier, like it always did after California, but it also felt familiar. Honest. I took a taxi home, saying no to the driver's offer to help with my bag. My hands knew the weight. The porch light was still on. I had left it on out of habit. My gardenia plant had bloomed while I was gone. It always grew best when I left it alone. Inside, I took off my shoes, put the suitcase by the door, and stood for a long time in the middle of my living room. Nothing had changed. The same quiet clock, the same quilt on the sofa, the same faint smell of lemon oil from my last cleaning. But something inside me was different. I wasn't waiting anymore. I made tea and stood by the window while it was getting ready, watching the neighbor's cat walk along the fence as if it owned the world. I liked its confidence. Then I opened the drawer under the side table, the one I hadn't touched in months, and took out the paper folder labeled Oliver. Inside were years of receipts, copies, and bank transfer papers, tuition fees, the deposit for his first apartment, his first wedding, which he had also let me help pay for, even the emergency dental surgery he had needed after falling off a bike in college. I had paid that bill, too. I spread them out on the table like cards. What would they tell me if I read them now? That I had always helped, that I had always given, that none of it had bought love. I found one receipt in particular, a bill from a flower shop from 13 years ago. Valentine's Day. He had forgotten to buy flowers for his first wife, so I had ordered them for him. He hadn't even paid me back. I laughed, not with anger, just with tiredness. Then I picked up the whole stack and walked them to the fireplace. The matchbook from Julian's funeral was still in the tray nearby. I lit a match and fed the folder to the flames. Let the past stay in the past. That night, I slept deeply. The kind of sleep that comes not from being tired, but from being free. When I woke the next morning, it was raining. A light, misty Portland rain that sounds like a memory, but doesn't cause a flood. I spent the morning working in the back garden. Weeds had grown around the rosemary bush, and the tomato plants needed to be tied up. I worked slowly, with care. I didn't think about the wedding. I didn't think about Oliver. I thought about the way June had put a piece of cake in my hand, like a peace offering in a war neither of us had started. I would call her today. I wasn't in a hurry. By noon, I had the hose rolled up, my gloves were drying, and a chicken was cooking in the oven. I had no guests. I just wanted something that tasted like comfort. And then the phone rang. It wasn't June. It was Oliver. The name on the screen felt like a challenge. I didn't answer it. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up. Then the text came. Oliver. Hey, I didn't see you at brunch today. You left already? Brunch. I stared at the words as if they were in another language. There had been a brunch after the wedding, of course, for close family and friends. I typed back 3 words, then erased them. I typed 5 more, then deleted them again. Finally, I put the phone down without responding. He called again 2 hours later. I ignored it again. This time, he left a message. Mom, I wanted to check in. Caitlin said you seemed quiet yesterday. Look, if something's wrong, can we talk? I know the wedding was a lot. Let's not leave things weird. Weird. That's what he called it. Not cruel, not hurtful, just weird. I didn't call back. Instead, I called June. Hey, Grandma, she answered right away. Her voice was bright and tired at the same time. Hi, darling, I said. How's the headache? Gone now. Caitlin's mom was pouring champagne like it was water. Sounds about right. There was a pause. You okay? She asked. I am now. I've been thinking about you all morning. I've been thinking about you, too. She hesitated. Dad asked if you were mad at him. I'm not mad. I said, I'm done pretending. She didn't ask what I meant. You want me to come over soon? I'd love that, I said, but today I'm cooking a chicken for myself for a change. June laughed. Good. You deserve it. When we hung up, I put the phone face down and walked to the oven. The smell was rich and comforting. I took the pan out, put it on the counter, and stood there for a while, letting the steam rise. I didn't need a table of 17 strangers. I didn't need a title spoken with a fake smile. I needed this, a quiet home, a warm kitchen, and the knowledge that I could still choose myself. The next few days passed in a kind of calm I hadn't felt in years. I didn't check my voicemail. I didn't look at my messages. I didn't look at social media, waiting for someone to say my name. The world outside could keep spinning. I had my own path now. In the morning, I would walk around the neighborhood with my hands in the sleeves of my sweater, nodding to the same old faces. We didn't talk much, but even that felt grounding. I was seen here. The day after the wedding, I had received 3 more texts from Oliver. Can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'd like to explain. I didn't reply, partly because I didn't know what to say, but mostly because I wanted to sit with the silence and see what he would do with it. By the end of the week, a letter arrived. It wasn't written by hand. It was typed neatly. I recognized the formal tone before I even opened the envelope. Mom, I'm sorry you felt excluded. That was never our intention. The wedding was crazy, and if your seating or introductions seemed off, it wasn't meant to be rude. Caitlin was under a lot of stress, and the planner may have misunderstood some of the arrangements. I do hope you enjoyed yourself. Let's catch up soon. Love, Oliver. That was it. I read it twice, looking for something. A sign of honesty. A little bit of sadness. I found nothing. Not a single mention of the word mother. Not a single apology that used his own voice. Just a polite shrug wrapped in paper. I folded the letter slowly and put it back in the envelope. Then I tucked it into the drawer where I used to keep birthday cards and drawings and notes written in crayon, the place where love used to live. It didn't belong there, but it didn't belong anywhere else either. And I wasn't going to pretend it never arrived. 2 days later, June called again. Can I come over this weekend? She asked. Of course. Just me, though. Nobody else. I told them I had to work. You didn't need an excuse. I know, but it's easier. I understood. When Saturday came, she arrived with a bunch of tulips and 2 slices of pie from a little cafe. I know yours is better, she said, but I didn't want to make you bake. I smiled and took the box. Then you've already done something they never did. We sat on the back porch with our plates on our knees, watching the light move across the fence. June was wearing a sweater that was too big for her, and no makeup. She looked like herself, not someone's daughter or guest or a name on a seating chart. Just June. I've been thinking, she said between bites, about all of it. The wedding, Dad, everything. So have I. I used to think family just was, you're born into it, and that's that. And now I think it's what you choose to protect and what protects you back. I nodded. Sometimes the people you gave everything to forget you were ever there, and the ones you barely expected anything from turn around and bring you pie. She looked at me, her eyes full of emotion. You gave up so much for them. I know. They don't deserve it. Maybe not. She hesitated. I don't know how to fix it or if it can be fixed. Sweetheart, I said gently, it's not your job to fix anything. It's just your job to keep your heart open, but only for those who won't use it as a doormat. She laughed, even as her eyes teared up. Grandma, you're kind of a badass. I'm old, I said. That's the same thing. Eventually, we finished our pie and drank tea, and I showed her the new legal papers for the trust. She tried to say no at first. Are you sure? I am. But you're the only one who never made me feel like I was a burden. She didn't speak after that. She just leaned her head on my shoulder as the sky turned pink and the wind picked up. Later, when she left, she hugged me tighter than she ever had before. I love you, she said. I know, I whispered back. That's the only reason I'm still standing. Sunday morning arrived with the smell of rain and the ache in my left hip that always came when the weather changed. I stayed in bed longer than usual. The quilt was pulled up to my chin, and the quiet wrapped around me like a second skin. There was no need to rush for a change. No obligations, no lists of favors that were just family duties in disguise. I got up slowly, boiled water for tea, and put a sweater over my pajamas. I stepped outside onto the porch with my mug in hand and watched the street shine in the early light. Portland rain was gentle. Even the clouds knew how to fall softly here. Across the street, Carol was already outside trimming her roses. She waved. I waved back. It was the kind of morning that asked for stillness, and I was happy to give it. The phone rang around 10 o'clock. Not a call, but a video call from Oliver. I stared at it as it rang, the screen flashing his name next to a photo of him and Caitlin. They were both smiling on a mountain hike, a photo I had never seen, one I had not been asked to take. I let it ring twice more before answering. He appeared on the screen, a little out of the frame. He was holding the phone too close to his face. His hair was messy, and the lighting was bad. "Hey," he said. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Oliver." A pause. He looked to the side before continuing. "Just wanted to check in. I know things have been weird." That word again. "I got your letter," I said. He shifted. "Yeah, I figured that might not be enough." "It wasn't." He looked away. "Okay, fair." Another pause. I waited. I wasn't going to do the work for him anymore. "I didn't realize Caitlin introduced you like that," he said. "As, Dad's ex. She didn't mean anything by it." "No," I said quietly. "I mean, it just came out wrong. She was nervous. The day was stressful. So it was a mistake." He hesitated. "Not exactly. I mean, look, I didn't think it mattered that much. You were there. It was a big day." I tilted my head. "You didn't think your mother's place in your life mattered?" His mouth opened, then closed again. "Oliver," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Did you notice that I was seated behind the cousins of Caitlin's college roommate?" He looked embarrassed. "That wasn't on purpose. I wasn't mentioned in the program. I wasn't introduced. You gave a speech and thanked your stepmother, but not the woman who raised you." He rubbed his jaw. "I know. I messed that up. I paid for your wedding." That stopped him. "I know," he said quietly. "I didn't want you to. Remember? I told you not to make a big deal. And so I didn't. I stayed invisible. And you let me." His face looked pained, not from sadness, but from feeling uncomfortable. The way a man looks when the truth makes the ground unsteady. "Why, Oliver?" He blinked. "Why? What? Why didn't you want me seen?" He opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again. "It's not about not wanting you there." "But it is," I said with a strange, hurting peace. "Because if it wasn't, you'd have made sure I was." He swallowed. "It's just, Caitlin's family is different. They're very perfect," he said, "and I'm not." He didn't answer. I let the silence hang because I wanted him to feel it, not to hurt him, but because I was done protecting people from the weight of their own choices. "I loved you through things you'll never remember," I said softly, "through baby problems and fevers and sadness and bad choices. I held the door open for you again and again, even when you didn't knock. And still, you walked past me like I was wallpaper. Something useful, something beige." "Mom." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just awake now." He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I know. I don't know how to fix it." "I do," I said. "You can start by learning how to say my name in a room full of people. Not as a small detail, not as an afterthought." He looked shocked. "You mean just say, 'This is my mom'?" "Yes," I said. "That would have been enough." He nodded slowly like he was trying to remember it. The screen changed. Caitlin had entered the frame, holding a coffee mug. "Is that your mom?" she asked too brightly. Oliver looked at me. "Do you want to talk to her?" "No," I said gently. He looked surprised. "Maybe one day," I added, "but not today." He nodded again. "Okay." I ended the call before he could say more. not out of meanness, but because I wanted the last word to be mine. Later that afternoon, I found myself putting books back on the bookshelf in the living room. Not because it was necessary, but because my hands wanted something to do, while my mind calmed down. The phone sat face down on the coffee table, silent now. The conversation with Oliver had left a strange taste in my mouth. Not bitter, not sweet, but something in between, like tea that has been left to sit for too long. I didn't regret answering, but I wasn't ready to hope again either. I put the books into new rows, memoirs on one shelf, cookbooks on another, gardening books below. My fingers stopped on one book, The Joy of Cooking, from 1972, full of notes written in pencil in the margins. Julian's handwriting. He always thought nutmeg made everything better. In the back of the book was a grocery list in my own handwriting, yellowed with age. Carrots, parsley, pain medicine, cake mix, eggs, and one word in big letters. Oliver's birthday. I hadn't meant to keep it, but there it was. I put the list back in the book and placed it carefully on the shelf. Some things weren't about letting go. Some things were just about putting them where they belonged. The doorbell rang just before 5. I wasn't expecting anyone. I dried my hands and opened the door. Caitlin. She stood there in a coat and jeans, a bag over her shoulder, her hair down, her makeup minimal. She held a bakery box in one hand. "I hope this isn't a bad time," she said. I stepped aside without speaking, and she walked in as if she had practiced it in the car. "I didn't come to argue," she said quickly, "or to explain. I wanted to say something face to face." I said nothing. Let her feel the weight. She set the bakery box down on the coffee table. "Lemon tart from a place called Bees. June said it's your favorite." I didn't move. She looked around the living room as if it might hurt her. "You have a beautiful home. What is it you wanted to say?" I asked finally. Caitlin took a breath. I didn't realize what I'd done until after the wedding. I raised my eyebrows. "No," she corrected herself. "That's not true. I realized while I was doing it. I just didn't stop. I waited. You made me feel nervous," she said, her voice quiet. "Not because you were mean, but because I didn't know how to understand you. Oliver told me little things about you, always with that angry tone he gets when he doesn't want to be weak. And I filled in the rest myself." She looked down. "And then you showed up, and you were elegant and calm, and I felt like a child next to you. So I tried to make you seem less important in front of everyone." Her voice shook. "I'm sorry. It wasn't a big show. It wasn't fake. It was just there, a sentence that cost her something." I nodded. "Thank you." She looked up, surprised by how easy I was being. "You know," I said softly, "I don't need to be adored. I've lived too long for that. But I do expect to be seen, especially by the people who marry into this family." Caitlin nodded. "I didn't see you. I saw what I was afraid of." "And what was that?" "That Oliver might still need you more than he needed me." That hit me deeply. I sat down slowly. "He doesn't." Her eyes flicked to mine. "I don't say that to make you feel better. I say it because it's the truth. He hasn't needed me in a long time. And that's fine. That's a part of raising a child. You teach them how to walk away, but it doesn't mean you stop being the one who gave them legs." She let out a breath. "I'm not angry anymore," I added, "but I am changed. I can see that." "Good." She looked at the tart. "Can I leave this?" "You can." She stood up, hesitant. "Would you ever want to try again with me? I mean, not to be friends, just to not be strangers." I thought about her. I said, "I'd like to wait and see how you treat June first. That'll tell me what I need to know." Her face softened. "Fair." She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "I'm glad you answered his call." I didn't answer for him. I said, I answered for myself. She nodded once and stepped out into the fading light. I closed the door gently behind her and looked at the lemon tart on the table. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Some actions take time to feel real. That night, I sat in the kitchen with a single slice of the lemon tart on a blue plate. The edges were too perfect, the glaze too shiny, like a dessert trying too hard to impress. I took a small bite. It was good. Not better than mine, but good. I didn't eat the rest. I covered the plate and put it in the fridge. I wasn't punishing her. I just wasn't ready to eat anything Caitlin offered, no matter how sweet it looked. I spent the rest of the evening reading. Nothing difficult. A gardening journal I had bought years ago and never finished. There was a section about trimming plants in winter, how certain plants needed to be cut back to their roots in order to grow again. It wasn't cruel. It was necessary. The tree doesn't mourn the lost branch. It just waits for the next season. That night, I slept without dreams. When I woke, the sky outside my window was the kind of soft, gray Portland wears like a shawl in late summer. I made coffee. No tea today. By 9, I was outside in the front garden trimming the lavender. The bees were slow this morning. Or maybe I was. My body moved slowly, but my mind felt sharper than it had in weeks. I was beginning to feel real again, not like someone's forgotten guest, but like someone with a place. The mail arrived late that day. When I brought it in, there was an envelope for me with my name and address written by hand. The handwriting was June's. Inside was a card, thick, cream-colored paper with a raised border. Dear Grandma, I wanted to say something important without messing it up over the phone. I've spent a lot of time feeling stuck between people, between what I owe and what I feel. But I've made a decision. I'm going to start saving money to move out. Maybe to Portland. Maybe not right away, but soon. I want to build a life that feels real, something that doesn't make me smaller. And I want to do it with people who see me. Thank you for being my first mirror. Love, June. I sat with the card in my lap for a long time, my hands still covered in dirt. I didn't cry, not out of holding back, but out of peace. Later that day, I called my lawyer again. I want to add something. I told Mr. Moore, to the trust. He was ready with his pen. Of course, if June wants to use it to study, to move, to build something, anything, I want her to know she doesn't need permission from me, from anyone. It's hers. Do you understand? And if she wants to start a business or even a life with someone else, I want that protected too. He paused. You're very thorough, Mrs. Holloway. I've lived long enough to know the difference between freedom and inheritance. I said. He laughed softly. I'll write it up. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat back and looked around my kitchen. Same white cupboards, same chipped mug, same quiet hum from the old fridge. But I felt like I was in a new house. A house where the choices were mine, where silence wasn't the normal state, where memories lived but didn't own me. That afternoon, I baked. Not for anyone else. Not for a party or a thank you or a fake apology. Just for myself. An almond cake, the kind Julian used to love. It was rich and golden around the edges. I didn't rush it. I let it cool completely. I sliced a single piece and sat on the porch with it and a cup of black coffee. And I thought about June, about what it meant to be the first mirror for someone. Not the most successful, not the loudest, not the best dressed at the wedding. Just the one who showed her who she really was. Whole, possible, and enough. I didn't hear from Oliver again for 2 weeks. Not a call, not a message, not a forwarded photo from the wedding album. Nothing. I didn't miss it. Instead, I lived. Not in a big way, but in a planned way. I met Carol for tea. I put the fern in the hallway in a new pot. I gave away 3 coats I hadn't worn in years and found a notebook in the back of my closet where I had once started writing a cookbook. I flipped through it slowly, page by page, like opening a time capsule sealed by distraction. I wasn't rebuilding. That word felt too loud. I was rediscovering. And then one morning, a Tuesday again, a package arrived. No note, no return address, just a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside, a wedding album, the kind made by professionals. Thick pages, a smooth cover, perfect lighting. Their names were written on the cover in gold. Caitlin and Oliver, July 19th, San Diego. I ran my fingers over the letters, not sure if I wanted to open it, but I did. Page after page of smiling faces, white dresses, pale roses, glasses of champagne. Caitlin's family in matching colors. Oliver smiling like the boy I once knew, just taller now, more careful. There were pictures of Eleanor, the stepmother, seated in the front row with Oliver and Caitlin, laughing. There were no pictures of me. Not one. Not at the ceremony. Not at the reception. Not at the edge of the dance floor. Not seated next to strangers at table 17. It was as if I had never been there at all. And for a moment, it almost worked. The erasing. I flipped back and forth through the pages, wondering if I had imagined being there myself. Then I turned to the final page. And there she was, June, in her sweater that was too big, her hair frizzy from the wind, holding a slice of almond cake on a plate. It was a photo taken without her knowing. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking off to the side. Maybe at me, maybe at no one, but she looked full, not empty, not faking, not pretending, just full of something real. I closed the book. It didn't sting, not anymore, because for all their planning, all their perfect photos and money, the only photo that felt honest was the one they hadn't meant to keep. I didn't throw the album away. I didn't send it back. I placed it on the shelf next to Julian's old cookbooks where it would stay, not as a memory, but as a record, proof of how far people will go to change the truth with a perfect image. That evening, I called June. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Grandma." "Hi, darling. I got a delivery today." "Oh, no," she said. "The album?" "Yes. I didn't know they were sending it. I would have warned you." "I'm glad they didn't." She paused. "Really? It reminded me that being erased doesn't mean you disappear. It just means you're no longer a part of someone else's story. Do you want to talk about it?" "No," I said gently. "I just wanted to hear your voice and to say thank you." "For what?" "For being in the photo that mattered." She was quiet for a moment. "Then you were in mine, too. You know, in your—" "What?" "My favorite photo from that day. I took it on my phone. It's just your hand, actually holding mine." I smiled. "Send it to me sometime," I said. "I will." After we hung up, I sat by the window with a blanket over my knees and watched the sun set behind the rooftops. It had been a clear day, the kind that used to make me feel worried. But now I felt calm. I didn't need a seat at every table. I didn't need my name in every speech. I just needed my own house, my own voice, and the strength to hold the pen when someone else tried to write my part for me. It rained again that Friday. Not a gentle Portland mist, but real rain, heavy and determined, like the sky had finally decided it had something to say. I stayed inside most of the day, doing small tasks. I cleaned out the spice drawer. I put oil on the hinges of the front door. I looked through old photo boxes, keeping only the ones that made me feel good instead of bad. That afternoon, I took down a box labeled Christmas from the hall closet. Inside were ornaments, most of them old, a few made by hand. I didn't know why I opened it. December was months away, but maybe I just needed to remember what once felt magical. Near the bottom, I found a card Oliver had made when he was 7. Red paper, glitter, glue smeared everywhere. To Mom, you make the house smell like good things. I love you even when you're mad. There was a drawing of me, clearly supposed to be wearing an apron, though I looked more like a firefighter holding a cake. I smiled. I didn't cry. Instead, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and taped the card on the fridge. Not because it was special, but as a reminder of who I was, of who he used to see. Later that evening, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I found Oliver. No call first, no warning. He stood there in a navy coat, his hair wet from the rain, holding a small grocery bag. His eyes looked into mine carefully. "Hi," he said. I didn't step aside. "Can I come in for a second?" I didn't answer right away. Then I moved just enough to let him pass. He walked in slowly, as if he expected the furniture to look different. He put the bag down on the counter. "I brought almond paste," he said, "and flour and eggs." I looked at the bag, then at him, planning to bake. "I wanted to learn," he said. "The almond cake. June said you still make it." I raised an eyebrow. "She said you made it for yourself, that you didn't share it." "I didn't," I said. "It wasn't for sharing." He nodded. I deserved that. I didn't answer. He looked around the kitchen, and his eyes stopped on the card on the fridge. "You kept that?" he asked softly. "For 35 years. He rubbed his hands together. "I was a selfish kid." "You were a child," I corrected. "But you became a selfish man." He winced, but didn't argue. "Do you want to make the cake or apologize?" I asked. "Both," he said. "If you'll let me." I stared at him, looking for a fake show. I didn't find one. What I saw was more humble than regret. Not a big action, just a man with wet sleeves and flour in a bag trying to come home. "Wash your hands," I said. He did. I took out the mixing bowl, measured things quietly. He stood beside me, his eyes watching my every move. When I cracked the eggs, he looked away. "I never got good at that." "You never tried." "I thought you liked doing everything." "I liked it when someone noticed." He nodded. We worked mostly in silence. He asked questions when he needed to. I didn't feel the quiet. For once, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just honest. While the cake baked, we sat at the kitchen table. I poured tea. He didn't ask for sugar. "I know what I did," he said eventually. "At the wedding. Before it. Years of it. I waited. I kept making you smaller because it made me feel bigger. And I thought maybe if I kept you in the background, people wouldn't see how much I still needed you." I said nothing. "I'm not proud of it." "You shouldn't be." He nodded. "I wish I'd done better." He said, "I wish that too, but I want to start." I drank my tea. "I know I don't deserve much," he added, "but maybe if there's any room left, I'd like to be let back in. Slowly, on your terms." The oven made a sound. I stood up, took out the cake, and put it on a rack to cool. It smelled just right. Warm, sweet, with a sharp almond smell. I sliced 2 pieces. We ate without ceremony. Halfway through his slice, Oliver put his fork down. "This tastes like Christmas." "It always did," I said. And we sat there, not quite mother and son again, but not strangers. Something quieter, but real. A beginning. The next morning, I woke to a clean kitchen and the faint smell of almonds still in the air. Oliver had stayed late, but not too late. He left without asking for anything. No praise, no reassurance, no invitation to return. Just a quiet thank you and a promise. "I'll call before I come next time." It wasn't a lot, but it was something. I poured tea and stood by the window, watching the light slowly move across the fence. The day looked like it would be long and quiet, my favorite kind. Then the phone rang. June. Morning, she said. I heard he came. News travels fast. I made him call me after. I wanted to make sure he didn't say anything stupid. He didn't, I said, which in itself is special. She laughed. He sounded different. He looked smaller. That's often what honesty does. Did it feel real? I'm not sure, I admitted. But he brought almond paste. That has to count for something. We talked a little longer about her new job, the slow leak in her apartment, the pair of boots she was saving for. She sounded lighter, too, like the weight of choosing sides had finally been lifted. After we hung up, I got dressed for the day. Real clothes, not just the kind you wear to pull weeds. Slacks, a sweater, a pair of earrings I hadn't worn in years. No reason really. I just wanted to look like someone with plans. I drove to the hardware store to buy a new handle for a drawer that had been loose since 2016. I bought a new plant for the hallway. I walked slowly through the aisles of kitchen things, letting my fingers touch the shiny steel and ceramic as if it mattered, because it did, because I mattered. Back home, I walked by the bookshelf and stopped. The wedding album was still there, untouched since the day it arrived. I took it out, flipped once more to the last page, to the picture of June, captured in her own light, holding her cake like a woman holding something more important than dessert. I carefully took the photo from the page and put it in a new frame. I placed it on the mantel. The other photos, the ones of perfect strangers and fake smiles, I left in the album, which I quietly closed. That night, I cooked a chicken again, just for myself. I sat at the kitchen table with a cloth napkin, a glass of wine, and no apology. Halfway through dinner, a message arrived. Oliver, would you be okay if Caitlin came with me next time? Only if you're ready. I didn't answer right away. I finished eating. I cleaned the table. I folded the napkin, rinsed the plate, and dried the fork. Then I texted back. She may come if she understands she's not coming to defend herself. His reply came fast. Oliver, understood. I'll make sure she does. And just like that, the ground beneath us shifted again. It wasn't broken. It wasn't fixed. It was just different. That night before bed, I lit a single candle on the windowsill. Julian used to do that during power outages. I always thought it was for light. But now I wondered if it had been for something else. A signal, maybe, a reminder that even when things get dark, someone is still here, holding a flame. I let it burn until I fell asleep. They came on a Sunday. Not early, but late enough that I'd already had time to read the newspaper, sweep the porch, and drink 2 cups of tea. I wore my green sweater, the one with the frayed sleeves that still made me feel like someone who had the right to be comfortable in her own house. When the doorbell rang, I didn't rush. Oliver stood on the porch again, but this time he stepped aside right away, letting Caitlin come into view. She held a small bouquet, not from a store, but of wild flowers tied with string. "Good morning," she said, her voice quieter than I remembered. "Come in," I said, shoes off. They did what I asked. I led them into the living room. It felt smaller now, with all 3 of us in it. I motioned to the couch. They sat, their hands close but not touching. I took my chair. There was a silence. Not mean, just careful, like animals smelling the air after a storm. I wanted to say something, Caitlin began, looking at her lap. And I didn't come to explain away what happened. I waited. I came to acknowledge it fully. She looked up. "I erased you." I didn't flinch. "And I don't have a reason that's good enough," she said. "I just wanted to control the story, the image, everything. And in doing that, I became someone I promised myself I'd never be. Someone who treats love like an object." I asked. She nodded. "Exactly." Oliver looked at her, surprised she had said it so clearly. But she didn't stop. "I thought if I kept you in the background, you wouldn't be a threat to anything. My role, my presence. And now, I asked, I see that I only made myself look small. I leaned back slightly, letting the weight of her words sink in. You brought flowers, I said. She nodded. From my mother's garden. She doesn't know I took them. I allowed myself a smile. Good. That's a start. We sat with that for a moment. I made lemon tart again. She said, twice actually. Still too sweet. Try adding salt to the crust. I said, balance is everything. She looked thankful for the advice. Not because it meant I approved, but because it meant we were speaking the same language. I won't force us to be close, she added, but I want to earn the chance to be known as myself, not as the woman who stood between a mother and her son. I looked at Oliver. He hadn't spoken yet. Do you feel the same? I asked. He swallowed. Yes. No conditions? No, he said. Just time and truth. Truth, I repeated. That's more expensive than most people realize. I know, he said. I'm ready to pay. We didn't hug. There was no music playing, just the sound of the clock ticking on the mantel and the faint smell of the lavender candle I had lit before they arrived. I stood up from my chair. Tea. They both nodded. I walked to the kitchen, boiled the water, and poured 3 cups, one black, one with honey, one with lemon. I still remembered how they liked their tea, not because they had earned that memory, but because I had. I placed the tray on the table between us. We drank in silence for a while. Eventually, Caitlin reached into her bag and took out a small frame. I printed something for you, she said. I looked. It was the photo of June, the one taken without her knowing, with the cake and the wind in her hair. I found it on her phone, Caitlin said. She let me borrow it. Thank you, I said. She said it was the most real moment of the whole wedding. She was right. I took the frame and set it next to the lamp. Oliver finally spoke. I'm sorry it took so long. It always takes longer than it should, I said, but better late than not at all. We didn't fix everything that afternoon. We didn't even touch the surface. But when they left, they did so quietly with respect. And when the door closed behind them, I stood in the hallway and took a deep breath. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and cut a new slice of almond cake. One for myself, and one to wrap in foil for someone else's hands. I used to think silence was a sign of strength, that if you didn't talk about the hurt, it made you dignified, that if you suffered alone, you were braver. But silence only works if someone is listening in the quiet. Otherwise, it's just a space you learn to survive in. I see that now. 2 months have passed since the wedding. 2 months since I flew to San Diego, sat in the back, and watched my name disappear from my own son's story. 2 months since I came home and remembered who I was, not as someone's mother, someone's guest, someone's mistake, but as someone whole. And now I am taking care of things, not people. Things that grow with care, not with expectations. My tomato plants are doing very well. I planted thyme near the gate. I've started writing again. Not letters this time, but recipes and notes in the margins. A different kind of history. The kind you pass down without needing applause. Oliver calls once a week. He's trying. I don't praise him for it, and I don't punish him when he messes up. I just answer if I feel like it. That's new for me. Caitlin sent a book of essays last week. Women talking about motherhood, getting older, identity. There was no message inside, just a yellow sticky note on the cover. Page 147 made me think of you. It was an essay about a real apology, the kind that doesn't ask to be forgiven, only to be seen. I kept the note, not because I forgive her, but because I see her trying. June visits often. She's looking for jobs now. She wants to move out within the year. She calls it building her own name. I told her that's all any of us ever do in the end. Some just start later than others. I made her promise one thing, that she would write it all down. The happiness, the doubt, the days she wonders if she's doing anything right. Not because I need to read it, but because someday she will. I have changed my will again, quietly. June still gets everything. But I added a letter, not legal, just one page hidden behind the trust document. It begins, "You don't owe anyone your silence, not even the ones who gave you life. Especially not them if they ask you to give up your own in return." I hope she reads it one day and nods, not with sadness, but with understanding. And me, I still walk to the bakery on Fridays. I still sweep the porch. I still make too much soup and freeze half of it for no one in particular. I don't look for meaning in every small action now. I just live. But when I bake the almond cake, I always make one extra slice. I wrap it in foil. I leave it on the counter just in case someone comes by, someone who finally learned how to knock. And if you have read this far, if something in this story felt too close to your own, then hear me quietly and clearly. You do not have to stay where you're not seen. You are allowed to choose yourself, even if it's late. And if you're holding something in your hands, pain, pride, a recipe no one ever thanked you for, write it down. Tell someone or tell yourself. But don't let it disappear, because you were here and you mattered.